Story 1. I don't even know what the smell was, but I once walked into a shop in Florence, and I was instantly transported back to my grandmother's house back in the early 1980s. She wasn't Italian, never been to Italy, so I have no idea what it was in that shop, but it was pure nostalgia. It was probably just because everything in the shop was old. Story 2. The smell of fresh-cut grass always takes me back to summer days as a child. It is like a time machine that brings back memories of playing outside with friends. Story 3. This is a little odd, so bear with me. I install flooring, and sometimes when I open up a new roll of vinyl, the smell instantly reminds me of the old plastic Halloween masks we wore in the 70s. Specifically for me, from the Spider-Man costume I wore when I was 5 years old. It is the exact same odor, and I know it even though it was almost 50 years ago that I smelled it. It's a good memory, and I don't want to think too hard about what kind of toxic fumes we might have been exposed to as children. Story 4. It's this scent I sometimes smell on the wind that blows through my windows. It's any time of the year and it's not artificial, like garbage, fumes, or oil, and it's not petrichor from the rain. It comes only on some gentle breezes, but not all breezes. It's also not the basic fresh air, as when I'm outside normally, I'm not smelling it constantly. I can't place the scent, and it drives me insane. But when I smell it, I'm hurled into the past when I was a kid and riding my bike around the neighborhood with my friends. Story 5. Today, I was driving my electric scooter and pulled out behind a bus, and the smell of the bus exhaust immediately brought me back to field trips with my summer camp when I was around 6 and 7 years old. Story 6. Humid basement in the Northeast. So many hated the smell, and I could never understand it. I loved it because it was directly associated with my lovely great Aunt Hilda, the sweetest lady to ever grace this space pebble. Story 7. The pavement after a fresh rain reminds me of childhood. The crisp fall air and Old Spice cologne remind me of my dad. Brute cologne of my first boyfriend. Baby lotion when my kids were newborns. Gumbo, my grandmother. I went to Europe in the 80s. There was a perfume I smelled all over Europe. Here in the States, I catch a whiff occasionally. Still, I don't know what it is. Story 8. The smell of the half-smoked joint inside of a cedar nightstand. Then drug abuse resistance education telling me that the smell is associated with hardcore narcotics and can ruin your lives. Story 9. Everyone has such sweet stories. Mine is the smell of pee on a toddler. It instantly makes me think of my cousin, who would always pee in my closet when we were little and tell my mom I did it. Story 10. Mothballs. That sharp, musty scent drags me right back to when I was 5, sitting in the warmth of a woman I called my second mom. The memories of her fight with cancer usually stay buried deep, but when that smell hits, it's like opening a door to another time. She wasn't just an escape from home, she was a refuge. I remember us accidentally eating clam chowder when her daughter was supposed to avoid seafood that Sunday, or belting out songs in the back seat after her blood transfusions. Those were stolen moments, little rebellions against the chaos of life. It's funny how something as simple as mothballs can resurrect the memory of a woman who fought cancer for 7 relentless years. She didn't have to take us in, but she took us in her heart, caring for us as if we were her own. That scent, as odd as it seems, brings back her strength, her love, and the way she made us feel safe in a world that often wasn't. Story 11. Cardamom smells like Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner around the table. Every time I cook the family turkey now, I can see Dad walk into the dining room and present the turkey. It was always perfectly browned, and the skin crispy. The stuffing was scooped directly from the bird into our plates, and it was just the best. Mom would always fret over the table settings. Were glasses already filled with water? Did the cloth napkins have the right napkin holders? Were the water pitchers filled? Everything like that. The slight chaos behind getting dinner onto the table and plates will always be my favorite. And the scent of cardamom is a key ingredient to those memories. Story 12. I work in the same high school I attended as a kid. Back in the 80s, the building had a very distinct smell. Not a bad smell per se, just unique to the building. Since then, the smells have changed with new paint, new floors, lots more plastics, etc. But every once in a while, when I walk in the building in the morning, I get a brief smell of the old building. Takes me back to 1985. Story 13, my friend's folks, when I was a kid, were smokers. Their bedroom had a mixed smell of their natural scent and cigarettes. Whenever something close to that smell hits me, it instantly takes me back to being a kid playing Sim Superstar and Postal 2 on the computer in their room, eating Razzle Gum, pizza, and going to the local Blockbuster to rent Fusion Frenzy and Kung Fu Fighting. I briefly grasped that childhood happiness again. Everything is the opposite now. His parents divorced, my friend overdosed, and now it's purely all memory. I'd give anything to go back. Story 14. I have a few memories triggered by scents that are incredibly powerful for me. One such scent is my grandmother's perfume or powder. By far, it is the one that takes me decades back and will always bring me back to me. Standing at the corner of the block, waiting for my grandmother to finish her walk from work. How excited I would be to see her, jumping and waving despite her still being 3 blocks away. I would run up to her when she was on our block and ask her how her day was, holding her hand and helping carry her purse. It is extremely rare, but I have come across the same scent a handful of times in the last 17 years. I need to find out what exactly it is. It is a memory I hope I could see a child of mine due to their own mother or grandmother. Another scent that takes me back is to 2017, my partner's morning breath. This one is my favorite. It may sound crazy, but her breath does not stink. It is an oddly pleasing scent to me. Yeah, I asked myself this in the beginning. It takes me back to when she was the only person to actually take the time, money, and inconvenience to fly across the country to hang out. At the time, I thought she just wanted to be friends, not being serious. Her sleeping in my bed, with glorious thick bed hair on display, taking up the whole bed like a cute pale starfish. Me trying not to fall out of bed, facing her, seeing the sunlight bouncing off her braces, and that sweet scent of morning breath hitting me point blank. It felt as if a dragon was unleashing all its force, but instead of pain, annoyance, or discomfort, all I felt was a soothing, gentle, and welcoming warmth. She thought I was lying and trying to make her feel better when I told her. She was apologizing at first. The third scent? Pineapple juice and Malibu rum mixed for Caribou Lou. My big brother and I were heavily into Tech 9. This was at a time when 2 introverts were deciding to socialize after high school. Many great nights filled with laughter, moments that would become memories, and some amazing bonding and better understanding between each other. God, I miss all 3 of them. Story 15. Cucumber melon body spray from Bath & Body Works will instantly transport me back to middle school for a moment, and the smell of spring and fall. Story 16. Jacaranda trees in blossom remind me of visiting my grandparents' farm in Nairobi, Kenya. At the age of 6 or so, I remember playing amongst all the old farm implements 45 years ago now. I now live in South Africa where these trees are pretty common, but they flower in October. In Kenya, on the equator, they flower in December. Story 17, hairspray like the aerosol kind, makeup, and taboo perfume. They take me back to summers in my grandmother's home. Before walking out the door for lunch or an errand, she'd spend 10 to 15 minutes in her makeup chair, listening to music and talking with me about everything and nothing while she put on her makeup. I miss it. Story 18. There are a lot for me and it can happen out of nowhere. I'll be standing there, then I'll smell something that reminds me of my memory. Some paints. It'll instantly remind me of my Department of Corrections job I had for years and some of the memories from there, which also makes me nauseous thinking about it. Another one is pear scents. It'll remind me of my middle school best friend. Rest in peace, Austin. Third, Clinique Happy and candies take me back to middle school right away. Fourth, Vaseline cocoa butter, which I use daily unless I'm using the generic kind, which doesn't have as strong an odor. Takes me back to when I started seeing an ex-boyfriend, but I still use it because of stretch marks and it's just my favorite daily body lotion. Story 19. The smell of smoke. My dad was a firefighter. Every time he came home, I was there to jump in his arms. He smelled like he had just come from a fire. I know he was tired and his back was hurting, but he still welcomed me into his arms. Story 20. The Scent of Eternity by Calvin Klein. My grandmother used to wear it. I'm adopted, but I have some memory left from before I was taken away at 3. I have a lot of sad memories, actually. But one happy one I privately cherished was hugs from my grandma, who gave me tight bear hugs, and I buried my face in her chest, taking deep breaths. One of the very few times I felt safe. I don't talk about her much, lots of pain, because when I was taken away and into foster care, my hero suddenly wouldn't save me. I kept asking her to take me home. I wanted to be with family. She said no to my face at 5 years old. When I asked why, she said she didn't want to raise kids again, and I was okay. I was adopted at 7 years old. My mom became my hero and never left my side until she passed in 2020. After adoption, my grandmother told me it was my job to call her and see her. Lord knows I tried. I can't say the same for her. I haven't spoken to her in over 18 years, and I don't care to, but that scent can bring me to my knees or bring a pleasant memory, which then angers me because of the reality. I forgive her, but I don't care to try anymore, even though it burns my soul. It hurts because I love her, but she didn't love me the same. Story 21. The smell of Houbigant Chantilly. That was my mother's signature scent. I remember Sunday mornings before getting ready for church. I was old enough to put on my slip and dress by myself, but she would come in and help me get my frilly ankle socks on with my Mary Jane shoes and would totally envelop me with that beautiful smell. She would let me have just a dab on my wrist. Elegant, unforgettable scent. Elegant, unforgettable lady. Rest in peace, Mom. 1943 to 2018. Story 22. The musty smell of a sandstone cave or an old house, the smell of an old book, or the smell of a shop that sells timber all take me back to memories throughout my childhood. Story 23. Silage, which is when farms mow grass for winter feed, takes me back to when I was living on a farm. Oh, and the slurry that dairy cows produce, yes, it smells different from beef cattle. Story 24. My first and third grade teachers, the same woman, perfume had an exotic allure to my 6 to 8-year-old self. I've chased that scent for over 55 years, and every time I'm in the mall and there's a perfume or cologne store, I try to find it. It's impossible for me to describe it, having not smelled it in years and not having the vocabulary at the time to articulate what the scent was. So no luck there. However, I know I'd recognize it if I ever smell it again. Mrs. Inagaki, wherever you are, I'll never forget you or your perfume. Edited to add, thank you for the kind award. Story 25. Slow cooker goulash. My mom went back to work on Saturdays, so my dad was in charge of us and making dinner. He only knew how to make goulash in the slow cooker. He was actually ahead of his time because he'd break out the Sinclair Spectrum and park me and my sister in front of it for the day while he put his feet up and watched the football on TV. Visited the National Media Museum a few years back and they had a Spectrum there. I could immediately smell the goulash cooking 35 years later. One of the weirdest experiences of my life. Story 26. I can't describe it, but there's a very specific home smell that takes me back to my grandma's. Like a specific combination of laundry detergent, living with pets, and an old person. It makes me nostalgic and sometimes sad because I don't have any grandparents left. Story 27. Start of 3rd grade, 1987. They were re-tearing the roof of the school. Now, whenever I smell hot tar, I'm instantly brought back to the spelling test I failed. Story 28. Sometimes, I'll get a whiff of certain foods that smell just like the hospital food I had when I had my kids. It instantly takes me back to those first couple of days in the hospital after giving birth. It's so cool how strong the memories are. Story 29. Machine grease. My dad was a machinist and always smelled of it. Even when he was clean and wore cologne, there was still a hint of that smell. I found an old shirt of his in storage a few years after he died, and it still had a faint scent. Story 30. Home Depot hardware stores were where my mom used to work when I was young, and she would take me to the kids' workshops to build little wooden shelves or cars. She still has the tiny orange Home Depot apron I would wear. Story 31. The breeze of an early summer night, cool, with just a little hint of the smell of warmed herbs and soil, always reminds me of the time when I was a kid. My parents often took me out for a walk after dinner. Story 32. My wife had a secret Santa. She received a perfume that was a knockoff of a Victoria's Secret scent my ex of 4 years always wore. She asked if I liked her new perfume, and I immediately asked what it was and knew exactly where I remembered it from. I told her, and she was irritated about it. My defense was, if you don't want to remind me of my ex, then don't wear it. Scent is the strongest sense tied to memory, and I can't help that. Story 33. Oil of Olay moisturizer instantly brings me back to hanging with my grandma. I don't smell this often, but occasionally, I'll get a whiff of Copenhagen chew. It instantly reminds me of my grandpa. Story 34. For me, the smell that instantly takes me back to the past is the scent of fresh-cut grass. Such a powerful trigger for nostalgia. Whenever I catch a whiff of it, I'm immediately transported back to the summers the first used to spend at my grandparents' house. They had this huge, sprawling backyard where we'd spend hours playing games like tag and hide and seek. My grandpa would always be out there, mowing the lawn, and that fresh, green smell just fills me with memories of those sunny, carefree days. The smell is so vivid and specific. It's like a little time capsule that opens up in my mind. I remember the feel of the sun on my face, the sound of my grandma calling us in for lemonade, and the way the grass felt between my toes. It's funny how a simple smell can bring back such a flood of memories and emotions. It makes me realize how strong our sense of smell is when it comes to recalling the past.